High in the Swiss Alps, winter hides everything. The mountains become white ghosts, roads vanish, and sound itself seems to sleep under the snow. On one of those mountains, halfway between the forest and the frozen lake, stands a building of wood and stone, a place the locals rarely speak about anymore, the Edelweiss Grand Hotel. The sign still hangs above the door, its letters faded by a century of cold wind. A few windows glow yellow at night, and smoke curls up from the single chimney. Inside, it always smells of pine resin and candle wax, like time stopped there long ago. Only a few travelers ever come. They find the hotel by accident, or so it seems. And when they arrive, the caretaker, a thin man with silver hair, greets them with the same quiet warning. Every room is open, except 217. Please, don't ask for that one. Most people smile politely and take another key, but not Elias Martin. Elias was a travel writer who preferred silence over crowds, mountain paths over cities. He had been wandering Europe collecting stories about places that remembered too much, old mines, forgotten monasteries, ghost villages. When he heard the rumor of a Swiss hotel that remembered its guests, he booked a single night. He arrived just before dusk, when the sky turned violet and snow began to fall again. His train had left him in a valley, and from there, a rattling taxi climbed the narrow road toward the lights of the Edelweiss Grand. When he stepped out, the air cut through his coat like needles. He looked up. The roof was heavy with snow. Icicles glittered like knives, and behind it all rose the black shape of the mountains. Inside, everything felt too quiet. A fire whispered in the lounge. The caretaker came from behind the desk, bowing slightly. "Good evening, monsieur. Welcome to the Edelweiss Grand." Elias smiled, brushing snow from his shoulders. "A beautiful place. It feels untouched." The caretaker hesitated. "Untouched, yes, sometimes by time itself." Elias laid his passport and reservation form on the counter. The caretaker adjusted his glasses and frowned. "Room 217. "That's what your website offered," Elias said lightly. For a heartbeat, the old man said nothing. Then, in a softer tone, "That room isn't usually given. It keeps its own memories. But if you insist, Monsieur Martin, the key is yours." He placed a long brass key on the counter. Its tag was old and dark, the number barely visible. The west wing of the hotel was dimly lit, lined with photographs in black and white frames. Faces from another century looked down, men with mustaches, women with pearls and long gowns. Their eyes followed Elias as he walked. His footsteps sounded dull on the thick carpet. He passed rooms 215, 216, and then the last door at the corner, room 217. The key turned with a heavy click. The door opened slowly, sighing as if the room itself exhaled. A faint scent of roses floated out, old, powdered, the kind that lingers in the folds of forgotten letters. The room was simple. A bed with white linen, a wooden wardrobe, a writing desk by the window, and an oval mirror framed in carved walnut. Everything looked perfectly ordinary, yet every surface felt too still, as though it had been waiting. Elias dropped his bag and stood listening. Nothing, no pipes, no footsteps from other rooms, just the hush of falling snow outside. He noted the details in his travel journal. Room 217. Smells of dust and perfume. Feels recently occupied, though untouched. Air heavy, temperature slightly colder than hallway. Then he smiled to himself. A room with a story. Good. He unpacked, lit the bedside lamp, and opened the window just enough for a ribbon of cold air to slip in. The valley below lay under silver moonlight, silent as a photograph. It was close to midnight when the whisper began. Very faint, like silk sliding over stone. At first, Elias thought it was wind sneaking through the shutters. Then words formed inside that sound. "Please, don't go." He froze, pen halfway to the paper. The lamp quivered, its light breathing. Another whisper, nearer now, just behind his shoulder. "Stay with me." Elias turned slowly. Empty room. He stood, crossed to the window, and looked out, only snow swirling in the moonlight. He touched the glass. It was freezing, yet on its surface a tiny oval patch had fogged, as if someone had breathed against it from inside. He wrote in his notebook again, hand trembling slightly. 12:17 a.m., female voice, pleading tone, unclear origin. Then he spoke softly into the stillness. "Who are you?" For a moment, only silence. Then a whisper, almost loving, brushing his ear. "I'm still here." Elias did not scream or run. He sat back on the bed, pulse steady, heart racing a little. This was what he had come for, the proof that some places keep echoes of their pain. He left the lamp on and waited until dawn crept pale over the snow. When he finally slept, he dreamed of music. A woman singing, a song without words, rising and falling like the wind through a glass hall. That evening, as twilight deepened, Elias returned to his room. He placed a small recorder on the desk and set it running. Then he whispered into the air, as though speaking across a century. "Clara, if you can hear me, you're not alone tonight." The lamp flickered once. A thread of cold air slipped through the room. Then a sound, soft humming, distant at first, then clearer. A woman's voice, trembling like a memory reborn. Elias closed his eyes. The melody wrapped around him, tender and tragic. For a long time, he simply listened. When he finally opened his eyes, the mirror above the desk was misted over. On its surface, faint words had appeared, written by an unseen hand. "Don't leave me again." Night returned gently, sliding down the mountain like a silk curtain. The lamps in the hallway burned low, their light amber and trembling. Somewhere deep in the hotel, a door closed, and the sound wandered through the corridors until it vanished. Elias sat by the writing desk. The small recorder's red light glowed like an ember. On the page before him, he had written only 2 words. She sang. He didn't know why his hands felt cold even though the fire was warm. He listened to the tape again, only wind and the faint creak of wood. The humming that had filled the room earlier was gone, as though it had existed only for him. He rose and walked to the mirror. The glass still bore a smudge, the ghost of the sentence she had written. "Don't leave me again." He traced the letters with his finger. The surface was cold enough to sting. The night deepened. Snow whispered against the window. Elias poured a little wine, the bottle from his pack cracking as the cork gave way. "To you, Clara," he murmured. He took a sip, closed his eyes, and almost at once the air changed. A faint perfume, roses and something older, filled the room. Then the first note came, soft as breath, a single tone, held impossibly long. It wavered, then bloomed into melody. He opened his eyes. The sound was coming from the mirror. Inside the glass, darkness thickened until it shaped itself into the outline of a woman. Not clear, not solid, more like moonlight trapped in smoke. Her head was bowed, hair falling across her face. Her mouth moved, but her eyes remained closed. Elias stood very still. He whispered, "Clara?" The figure lifted her head. Her eyes opened. Not hollow, not hateful, just endlessly sad. She kept singing, and with every word, the temperature of the room dropped. The song was beautiful. Even through fear, Elias felt the pull of it, a lullaby without language, a rhythm older than memory. It filled the space between the clock ticks. It felt like love remembered too late. He found himself answering, quietly at first, then stronger, just humming along, trying to catch the pattern. For a moment, the woman smiled. The mirror cleared, and he saw her as she must have been in life, young, radiant, standing in a pale dress before a grand piano. He blinked, and the image was gone. Only his own reflection stared back, pale and shaken. From somewhere inside the walls came a gentle tapping, 3 taps. Pause. Then 3 more. Like a code. He pressed his ear to the plaster. Nothing but his own heartbeat. When he looked at the mirror again, fresh frost had spread across it. In the white film, a new line appeared. Stay until the last note. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat by the fire, notebook open, recording every sound. Sometimes there was a step in the hallway. Sometimes the whisper of skirts brushing the floor. Once, just before dawn, he heard laughter. 2 voices, overlapping, 1 male, 1 female. A memory that didn't belong to him. When light finally reached the window, the mirror was clear again. But the scent of roses still hung in the air. The caretaker found him in the lounge, staring into his coffee. He said nothing at first. He only placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "She is stronger when someone listens," he said at last. "Each winter her voice grows quieter, until another listener arrives." Elias looked up. "And if someone stays?" "Then the mountain keeps both." The caretaker's voice trembled on that final word. Then he walked away, leaving Elias with the sound of the fire and the whisper of snow at the windows. Elias wrote 1 line in his notebook before going back upstairs. "I think I already promised to stay." That night would not be quiet. Evening came early, bringing clouds heavy with new snow. The hotel seemed smaller, as though the darkness outside pressed its walls inward. Elias lit 2 candles. He set the recorder again and spoke softly. "Clara, I will stay until the last note." The flame bent toward him, or toward something behind him. The air filled with that scent again. And from the mirror came the first chord of a piano, a sound no instrument in the room could have made. He closed his eyes and listened. The snow kept falling, layer upon layer, until the whole valley seemed to disappear beneath it. Inside the Edelweiss Grand, silence pressed against the walls like a second kind of weather. Every corridor had its own hush. Only the small lamp in room 217 gave off a circle of warm light. Elias sat at the writing desk. The recorder's tiny red eye blinked beside his notebook. He had stopped writing. He was only listening. At first, there was nothing. Then, from the mirror, a single note, thin as thread, slipped into the room. It trembled, wavered, and grew steadier, joined by another and another until a melody formed. A piano again, distant yet close, as though played from inside the glass. He whispered, "I'm here." The answer came as a breath of air that moved the candle flame. Then her voice, clearer than before, almost human now. "You kept your word." Elias turned toward the mirror. The surface was clouded, but within the mist he saw the faint outline of a ballroom. Tall windows, chandeliers blurred by time. A woman at the piano in a white dress. He stepped closer. The music wrapped around him like a shawl. "Clara," he said softly, "what do you want me to hear?" Her reflection looked up, eyes full of light and sorrow.
"The ending," she said. "No one ever listened to the ending." He reached out and placed his fingertips against the glass. It was so cold it burned. Under his touch, the music swelled. A final passage, tender and slow, every note a heartbeat. Then came the last chord, gentle, sustained, dissolving into silence. The mirror cleared. For a long time, there was only Elias's own reflection, pale in the candlelight. He felt tears on his cheeks without knowing why.
Behind him, something shifted, the weight of air, the soft sigh of fabric. He turned. The chair by the window was occupied, not by a ghostly figure, but by the faint shimmer of presence, like heat rising from snow. He didn't move closer. He only said, "It's finished now." The air around him eased, warmer suddenly, as if the room itself had taken a deep breath after years of holding it in. The scent of roses faded, replaced by clean, cold air. Morning came quietly. Light spilled over the mountains and found its way through the curtains. Elias awoke in the chair, the recorder still blinking. He pressed play. No voice, no piano, only the long sound of wind moving past the window. He smiled. For the first time since he'd arrived, the room felt empty in the right way, peaceful. He packed slowly, placed his notebook on the desk, and wrote a final line. She finished her song. When he closed the door, it didn't creak or sigh. It closed like any other door. Downstairs, the caretaker waited by the fire. He looked up as Elias approached, surprise flickering across his face. "You're leaving?" "Yes," Elias said. "She can rest now." The caretaker bowed his head. "Then perhaps so can this house." Outside, the road had been cleared. The air smelled of pine and snow and something almost like spring. Elias walked down toward the station, his boots making small prints that filled quickly behind him. That evening, the caretaker unlocked room 217 one last time. He stepped inside. The air was still, ordinary. On the mirror, faint in the dust, were 2 words written in a delicate hand. "Thank you." He smiled, closed the shutters, and turned the key. The wind outside carried a note of music, a single fading chord. Some say it was only the wind playing tricks with the eaves. Others say it was Clara Weiss, finishing her song, free at last. Winter passed quietly over the valley. By early spring, the trains returned, and the tourists began to drift through the town again. But the Edelweiss Grand remained closed, its windows shuttered, its doors sealed against the wind. Only the caretaker came each morning, carrying a small thermos of coffee and a ring of keys that jingled like old memories. He kept the lobby dust-free, polished the banister, and lit a single lamp near the front desk. Sometimes he paused on the second-floor landing and listened. The hotel no longer breathed, it only waited. One afternoon, as light slanted through the skylight, he noticed something on the reception counter, a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. There was no note, no footprint in the dust. Inside, he found Elias's tape recorder. He stared at it for a long time before pressing play. The tape hissed softly, like snow sliding from a roof. Then came Elias's voice, calm and measured. "This is Elias Kovacs, recording 3, room 217. There was a pause. He could almost hear the man smiling. "It's quiet now. The melody's complete. If anyone finds this, don't stay here out of curiosity. Stay only if you mean to listen, properly." A faint chord followed, the same piano phrase that had haunted the caretaker for years. But now it sounded different, lighter, almost content. He sat very still until the tape clicked off. That night, unable to sleep, he climbed to the second floor and unlocked room 217. The air smelled of cedar and dust, nothing more. Moonlight touched the mirror. No writing, no frost, no reflection other than his own tired face.
He placed the recorder on the desk and pressed play once more. The music filled the room, warm and clear. For the first time in decades, the caretaker felt peace rather than fear. He closed his eyes and let the notes carry him. When the tape ended, he whispered into the quiet, "Good night, Clara. Good night, Elias." Then he locked the door behind him and never opened it again.
Years later, new owners restored the Edelweiss Grand. They painted the halls, repaired the roof, filled the rooms with laughter and light. But room 217 remained different. No matter how often they scrubbed or repainted, a faint scent of roses lingered. Guests who stayed there spoke of gentle piano music drifting through their dreams, never frightening, only beautiful, as if someone were playing them to sleep. And every spring, when snow melted on the slopes, a single white rose bloomed by the window of that room, even though no one ever planted it there.